Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. The subject of our interpretation this time is the Soviet novel, The Dawns Are Quiet Here. Published in 1969 in the Soviet magazine Youth, The Dawns Are Quiet Here catapulted its then relatively unknown author, Vasilyev, to fame. In 1972, a film adaptation with the same title was released, with the author himself involved in the screenplay, faithfully presenting almost all the details from the novel. The following year, the film received the Venice International Film Festival Commemorative Award, the grand prize at the All-Union Film Festival, and a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. How could a Soviet film simultaneously resonate in both the East and West during the peak of the Cold War? It is likely because the book revealed the shared human emotions during the anti-fascist war. In fact, many details in The Dawns Are Quiet Here are based on Vasilyev's own experiences. Born into a military family, Vasilyev initially aspired to become a historian, but his dreams were shattered by the war. He joined the military after the outbreak of World War II, got injured on the battlefield, then transferred to a military academy. It wasn't until he formally retired from the army in his 40s that he began his literary career. The Dawns Are Quiet Here was his debut novel, originally titled A Spring That Never Was. During its creation, Vasilyev transformed familiar male soldiers into female soldiers. This change aimed to enhance the artistic impact through significant contrast, emphasizing the tragedy of the story. Additionally, it paid homage to the many Soviet women who made significant sacrifices during World War II. The story of The Dawns Are Quiet Here unfolds during World War II in the Soviet Union at a train station numbered 171. After several rounds of bombings by the German forces, the station seemed to return to its usual calm. However, the presence of anti-aircraft guns in only 12 households of elderly, women, and children served as constant reminders that the war was far from over. The soldiers stationed here for rest and deployment repeatedly caused headaches for Vaskov, the military transport administrator at the station. Frustrated by their alcohol consumption, flirting with local girls and widows, and even engaging in physical fights due to jealousy, Vaskov repeatedly reported to higher-ups, requesting soldiers who wouldn't drink excessively or engage in inappropriate relationships. After numerous entanglements, a solution was finally proposed: send 2 platoons of female soldiers. One morning, female soldier Lita spotted 2 German soldiers not far from their base in the forest. After receiving the news and making a preliminary assessment, Vaskov concluded that the enemy intended to sabotage the railway. With orders from headquarters, Vaskov was instructed to lead 5 people to capture the enemy. Vaskov appointed Lita, who discovered the enemy, as the squad leader. She then selected Runka, Galka, Lisa, and Sonia, who served as a translator, forming the capture team of 6. After a brief preparation, the squad set out. Vaskov, a seasoned veteran familiar with the local terrain, led the team through the swamp to intercept the enemy. However, to his surprise, the enemy wasn't 2 but 16 soldiers. Vaskov, realizing the need for reinforcements, sent Lisa back for help while trying to delay the enemy. Anticipating that the enemy wouldn't want to reveal themselves and would take detours upon encountering people, Vaskov planned to pretend to be lumberjacks with the girls, making noise in the forest to create the illusion of a large group. Unfortunately, the plan went awry, and the enemy decided to expose them and eliminate them before continuing their march. In the subsequent battle, the capture team was outnumbered, outgunned, and lacked combat experience. 5 female soldiers sacrificed themselves, and Vaskov suffered a severe injury to his left hand. However, with their tenacious spirit, they inflicted a cost of 11 enemy soldiers. To stall the situation and prevent further losses among his comrades, Vaskov decided to make a desperate move. In the end, he achieved a miracle by launching a surprise attack, eliminating the German sentinels, and intimidating the remaining 4 soldiers with a deactivated grenade. He successfully captured the remaining German soldiers. On the way back escorting the prisoners, exhausted, Vaskov collapsed upon seeing their fellow countrymen coming to meet them. Many years later, Vaskov, accompanied by Lita's son, returned to the place where the 5 female soldiers sacrificed themselves. He erected a marble tombstone in their memory, ensuring that they were not forgotten by people. Vaskov's process of achieving victory against overwhelming odds and fighting alone may seem somewhat legendary. However, when placed in the context of history, this story can be viewed as a vivid microcosm of the entire war. Throughout history, Russia's victories over Napoleon and the Soviet Union's repulsion of Hitler were both achieved in dire circumstances. Napoleon's burning of Moscow and Hitler's near-total destruction of the city of Stalingrad, including the Volgograd region, demonstrated the extremities these nations faced. Whether in morale, weaponry, individual skills, or even troop numbers, both Russia and the Soviet Union were not in advantageous positions. How did these miracles happen? A closer understanding of Russia might reveal some reasons. Firstly, a significant part of Russia's vast landmass is located within the Arctic Circle, and Moscow, the capital, experiences extremely cold winters with almost yearly heavy snowfall. During deep winter, most regions of Russia receive less than 6 hours of average sunlight per day. Such weather is challenging for many European nations, providing Russia with a climatic advantage. Additionally, whether it be Russia, the Soviet Union, or present-day Russia, the country boasts the world's largest territorial expanse, obtained through continuous military conquests since its inception. Russia was initially established in the flat plains of Eastern Europe, around present-day Kiev, Ukraine. This location was strategically difficult to defend in war, being surrounded by major powers, posing a constant threat. Therefore, Russia expanded eastward, reaching the Bering Strait. Even the United States exclave, Alaska, was originally bought from Russia. Russia's deep-rooted sense of insecurity is reflected in its obsessive attachment to territory. The expansive territory, a prerequisite for Napoleon and Hitler's downfall, contributes to Russia's geographic advantage. Despite these geographical advantages, if soldiers lack fighting spirit, and generals give up prematurely, then even the best objective conditions are futile. Hence, human factors are the most crucial elements in warfare. When speaking of human factors, it is impossible not to mention the national character of the Russian people. If summarized with labels, martial, extreme, and emotional are often used to describe Russians. The martial aspect is well known, and many in China humorously refer to Russians as the warlike nation. Russia is a country that frequently swings between extremes, even represented by the double-headed eagle on its national emblem, signifying its position as both European and Asian, Western and Eastern. However, in reality, it tends to either completely Westernize or de-Europeanize, revealing its inclination towards extremes. The emotional aspect can be explained with everyday examples. Russians enjoy drinking, and when they do, they often drink to excess. They don't need encouragement from others. Drinking is a form of enjoyment for them. If a tall and robust Russian man, after drinking, reminisces about past sorrows and sheds tears, most Russians consider this a genuine expression of character and not embarrassing. The combination of these three national traits makes Russians resilient, especially in adversity, and notably, during wartime, where they often unleash incredible strength. Because people are the decisive factor in war, in a literary work like The Dawns Are Quiet Here, which reflects war, Vasilyev deliberately avoids depicting grand war scenes. Instead, he focuses on the people involved in the war. These characters have flaws and desires, fears, and make mistakes. These imperfections make them appear real and endearing, no longer the cold, symbolized combat heroes. Through the portrayal of these characters, Vasilyev successfully blends heroism with the tragic fate of individuals, allowing readers to feel a warmth of humanity amidst the raging fires of war. Now, let's take a closer look at some of the main characters that appear in the story. Vasilyev was a stoic veteran. Though he was only 32 years old, he had over a decade of military service. When Vasilyev was in the 4th grade, his father died at the hands of a bear. To support his family, Vasilyev had to drop out of school and enlist in the military. After graduating from the military academy, he earned the rank of lieutenant. Later, Vasilyev married a nurse from a field hospital and had a son. However, when he was fighting on the front lines, his wife eloped with someone else. Vasilyev promptly divorced her, securing custody of his son. Unexpectedly, the child tragically passed away less than a year later while living in the countryside with his grandmother. Since then, Vasilyev rarely smiled. Due to his past military achievements, Vasilyev was appointed as the military transport administrator for Station 171, responsible for managing the supplies around the station. With all the local men gone to the front lines, Vasilyev became the only military personnel and the sole male resident. When the female soldiers arrived, he would sternly instruct them, often quoting from the military drill manual. He wasn't intentionally picking faults but was earnestly trying to impart all he knew to these female soldiers, hoping that the knowledge from the manual would help them survive in battle. Every time a female soldier sacrificed herself, he felt immense pain but had to suppress it fiercely. He knew he was the backbone of the team, and any sign of sentimentality would only instill more fear of war in others. It wasn't until the last female soldier, Lida, sacrificed herself that Vasilyev finally revealed his inner vulnerability and guilt. "I harmed you all, I harmed all 5 of you. If someone were to question me in the future, how did you manly men fail to protect our mothers? Why did you hand them over to death, while you yourselves remained unharmed?" Vasilyev can be considered a typical representation of Soviet soldiers, stiff, reserved, and chauvinistic, yet filled with a sense of heroism. He believed that a woman's role was to care for the family and nurture life, not to participate in combat and killing. This psychological perspective is portrayed quite realistically in the novel. In that specific era, allowing women to go to the battlefield and sacrifice themselves was the most painful dilemma for all male soldiers. Now, let's look at the 5 female soldiers presented in the novel. Sonia, a Jewish woman, originally studied at a university in Moscow. In her first year, she met a bespectacled male classmate in the library, and a sweet yet inexperienced relationship developed between them. Soon after completing her first year, war broke out, and the male classmate decided to join the voluntary army. Before leaving, he gave her a poetry collection as a token. From then on, they lost contact. This poetry collection became Sonia's only solace during the war. In moments of rest, she would often recite poems softly. When Vasilyev asked her why she read aloud, she replied, "Because it's poetry." This romantic girl eventually did not escape her fate, and was the first one discovered and killed by the German soldiers. Sonia's death completely shattered the already timid Galia. When encountering German soldiers, she panicked and tried to escape, screaming "Mom!" However, with no mother present, the Germans showed no mercy and shot her dead. In reality, Galia was an abandoned infant, and her surname in Russian meant a quarter of a ruble because she was 1/4 shorter than her peers when in the orphanage. This tragic fate and her frail physique brought about an insurmountable sense of inferiority. To attract attention, she continuously lied from her time in the orphanage. Fearing that people would look down on her and mock her, she would cover up previous lies with even bigger lies, all to avoid being ignored. After joining the army, Galia claimed her mother was a doctor, and her comrades never doubted her. Later, even she herself believed in this false identity. After Sonia's sacrifice, Vasilyev asked her to wear Sonia's boots, but she stubbornly said, "This won't work. My mom is a doctor." In character portrayal, Vasilyev's language is remarkably restrained. The austere language style, combined with the tragic plot, creates a contrast that outlines a deeply immersed female character, unwilling to awaken from her self-assigned role and yearning for warmth, family, and maternal love even in the extreme environment of war. Li Xiao was the youngest girl in the class, just turning 19. Tomorrow may not be better, but a better tomorrow will surely come. This has been her steadfast belief since she was 14. At the age of 14, her family was designated as kulaks, their land confiscated, and her mother fell ill with lung disease. Her father, always drinking, left the burden of supporting the family on Li Xiao's shoulders. She was too busy to think about the enigmatic matters of life and death. All she wanted was a genuine life. After arriving at Station 171, she fell in love with Vasilyev at first sight, even crying when she heard he was already living with a landlady. Nevertheless, she still anticipated a new tomorrow because one day Vasilyev sang a song with her name and promised to sing with her after the war. When they discovered 16 German soldiers, Li Sha, being the youngest and most physically fit, was sent back to request reinforcements. However, during the marsh crossing, she didn't follow Vaskov's orders completely, resulting in an accident that left her forever in the swamp, never to see tomorrow again. Runka was a very special girl, not just because she was the prettiest, had the best figure, and was the liveliest among them, but also because her father was a senior Soviet military officer, highly decorated and even awarded medals in the Kremlin. She learned horseback riding, marksmanship, attended dances, and even went hunting with men, always the absolute center of attention. However, fate's favoritism toward her did not last. All her family members died at the hands of the German soldiers. While her father's death could be attributed to war, Runka understood that war inevitably claimed lives. However, the deaths of her other family members triggered an intense hatred for the fascists. She witnessed firsthand how the Germans slaughtered civilians and military personnel. She watched as her family was rounded up by the Germans, mowed down with machine guns, and only escaped herself by being hidden by a neighbor. Filled with hatred, Runka came to the front alone, seeking revenge against the German invaders. Despite the change in her fate, Runka still faced everything optimistically because she always remembered her father's words: the daughter of a Red Army commander should fear nothing. Therefore, when they decided to impersonate lumberjacks, Runka rushed out without hesitation to draw away the Germans. When she saw Lida was severely injured, she immediately stepped forward, luring the enemy away. Even after being shot, Runka didn't choose to hide or retreat. As long as she had a gun with bullets, she kept firing until the last drop of blood drained. Consequently, after her death, the Germans, just like they did to her little sister years ago, mercilessly fired a few more shots and gazed at her proud and beautiful face for a long time. Lida was the most special among these female soldiers. She was always quiet, not given to laughter or frivolity. Rarely did one see the youthfulness and romance of a girl in her 20s in her. This was because she was a martyr's wife and a mother. While in high school, she met a border guard officer at a social dance, quickly fell in love, and got married. When she got married, Lida was just 5 months past her 18th birthday. After marriage, she lived with her husband at the border post, quickly learning skills like bandaging, shooting, and first aid. A year later, she became a mother. When her child was not even a year old, war broke out, and Lida sent her young son back to her parents' home while she stayed near the border post where her husband served. She always longed for the day when she could be reunited with her husband, but unfortunately, he sacrificed himself on the second day of the war. Although her superiors wanted her to retreat to the rear, every time they sent her on a train, she returned to the front the next day. In the end, her superiors agreed to let her go to an anti-aircraft machine gun school. After graduation, she insisted on returning to the place where her husband had sacrificed himself. She hid all her emotions, even burying her husband's death deep in her memory. When the female soldiers around her yearned for love, Lida always found it challenging to fit in because she felt her comrades couldn't understand her. Coming to Station 171 for rotation was Lida's strong request because it was only a little over 100 kilometers from her parents' home. At night, Lida secretly sneaked out of the camp, hitchhiking into the city, bringing her mother sugar, rations, and canned food she had saved up, and then rushed back to the station overnight. Of course, she knew that leaving the camp violated military regulations, but her mother's nature made her take risks again and again, even running several times in a week. It was on her way back from the city that she saw the Germans hiding in the woods. In the pursuit of the Germans, Lida was always the most serious, not just because she was the second in command under Vasilyev, but also because she felt herself the wife of a martyr and a mother. She deeply understood that gender dissolved on the battlefield, leaving only the distinction between life and death. As the most mature female warrior in the entire squad, only she could remain as calm as Vasilyev when witnessing her comrades sacrifice one after another. It wasn't until the final moments of her life that she unloaded all her burdens, revealing the softness of a young girl. Before her death, she requested Vasilyev to give her a gentle, friendly kiss, then said, "The beard really scratches." When Vaskov walked away, Lida used a bullet to end her young life. 5 female soldiers from various regions of the Soviet Union, each with different identities and experiences, ultimately couldn't escape tragedy. In the face of the brutal war machine, these women neither became numb nor were blinded by hatred. Instead, they radiated the light of humanity at every turn until their last moments, never losing their desire for life and love. You might find it strange why so many women from different regions of the Soviet Union, of different ages and backgrounds, appeared on the battlefield, even intellectuals having to go to war. Here's a brief overview of the real situation in the Soviet Union at that time. In World War II, the Soviet Union, as the main force fighting on the Eastern Front against Germany, can be said to have achieved a Pyrrhic victory by sacrificing 1,000 of its soldiers to kill 800 enemies. According to incomplete statistics, the number of Soviet soldiers killed in action during World War II reached a staggering 8.9 million, with some estimates suggesting casualties of up to 14 million. Keep in mind that the population of the Soviet Union was less than 180 million before the war started. From these casualty figures, it is clear that the Soviet Union almost exhausted its entire fighting-age population. To replenish the massive losses and reduce personnel, when men were not enough, women became an important combat force. During World War II, the Soviet Union mobilized and conscripted 800,000 female soldiers, setting a world record. These female soldiers not only took on communication, medical, and logistical roles but, for the most part, also charged at the front line. Among these female soldiers emerged numerous legends, such as the Soviet ace female pilot Lydia Litviak and the legendary female sniper Lyudmila Pavlichenko. Equally worth commemorating are those countless women who made silent sacrifices on Soviet soil. Although the Soviet Union defeated Germany, the aftermath of the war has not been eradicated even today. Most of those who sacrificed during the war were males over the age of 16. Therefore, after the war, the gender ratio in the Soviet Union reached a terrible 77.6 to 100. Subsequently, the Soviet Union vigorously implemented population policies, and this ratio improved slightly. However, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the gender ratio in Russia widened again. According to the 2018 Russian population survey, among the 146 million Russians, women were approximately 78.6 million, constituting 53.7% of the total population, while men were only 67.85 million, accounting for 46.3% of the total population. As the largest country in the world in terms of land area, Russia faces severe social problems, especially in terms of the male-to-female ratio. Lastly, returning to our initial question, why does this story resonate so profoundly? The most important reason is that The Dawns Are Quiet here abandons the depiction of grand war scenes, does not overly pursue the thrilling aspects of the battle process, and even glosses over the praise of patriotism and heroism. In a limited space, Vasily Grossman, with extremely precise language, successfully portrayed the characters of the 6 main figures. Throughout, the novel focuses on the joys, sorrows, anger, and laughter of ordinary people in war. The author tries to grasp the souls that the cruel war cannot wear down or destroy. Ultimately, The Dawns Are Quiet here is not meant to discuss the right and wrong behind the war but to call for people to love passionately, and strive to live in times of peace, making it its most profound theme. To sum up, that concludes our discussion for this issue. Let's review the key points covered. 1. In 1969, The Dawns Are Quiet here was published in the Soviet magazine Youth. At that time, the author, Vasily Grossman, was still an unknown newcomer, and with this novel, he became famous. Many details in the story are drawn from Grossman's personal experiences. 2. The Dawns Are Quiet here portrays a war and the characters of 6 main individuals. The plot develops with ups and downs, but the language is extremely plain and restrained. 3. The ability of The Dawns Are Quiet here to break through ideological blockade and gain recognition from both major blocs during the Cold War is because it focuses on the joys, sorrows, anger, and laughter of ordinary people in war. Calling for people to love passionately, and strive to live in times of peace is its most profound theme. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.